what is the best hacks to prep your week?
Yeah. So there's levels to it, right? I would consider it almost like level one, level two, level three ways of preparing your meals. And the yields will basically just be in flavor and sometimes in cost as well. So there are cheap and easy options when it comes to prepping meals. And for most people, that's going to be bulk cooking on something like a Sunday. And that's going to look like, for example, oven baking chicken breast. That's one of my favorite ways to bulk prep, is because you can cook them all at once. It takes you about 20 minutes in the oven. The problem that most people run into is they don't know how to season. So if you're listening to this, listen closely. Uh, Salt, pepper, onion powder, garlic powder, and paprika as like a minimum. If you just mix those together and you sprinkle that on your chicken breast, it's still going to taste decently good, right? It's still going to, even if you overcook the shit out of it, it's still going to be salvageable. The second thing is not to overcook what you're eating and have a bit of an idea of actually learning how to cook. This is going to take time to learn how to cook. But when it comes to something like batch baking the chicken breasts, like I have a little thermometer that I'll check the temperature of them to make sure that they don't go over like 65 or so degrees in the oven. Because if they're about there internally, they're going to squeeze out all their moisture and they're just going to end up sort of dry. So if you can, avoid overcooking them. Now, you don't have to go out there and buy like a food thermometer, but if you do have one, it's a good use for it. But it's just making sure, maybe you cut open a little bit of the chicken and you see, is it still quite juicy inside? Yep, perfect. Pull it out. As long as it's not pink inside, it'll basically be done. So batch cooking on the Sunday is going to involve using things like a rice cooker or a big pan in order to get a bunch of rice going. Now, rice cooker is the biggest thing in my life that has been such a godsend. You can pop it on and delay it for 8 hours. You can put it on in the morning and rice will be ready by the time you get home. It's always perfectly cooked. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to manage like a burner and putting the lid on and off and, I let all the steam out. Did I ruin the rice? All the shit that goes on. So a rice cooker, you can get them for like 30-40 bucks, just like a little one pot instant pot things. Put in the water, put in the rice, it's good to go. Put in a little bit of salt. You don't have to cook brown rice, right? Jasmine rice, white rice is still just as good, just pretty much the same. Like there's much of a muchness in terms of difference. White rice actually a little bit better absorbed on the gut. So for me, texture and taste is better. So whatever tickles your fancy. Prepping those things ahead of time is going to be big, and it's also really easy when you can do like 3 cups of rice. Bang them into a rice cooker. Put in, I think it's like about 5 cups of water, whatever your one does. After about an hour, you're going to have a bunch of carbs ready to go. The second thing when it comes to meal prepping, once you've like prepped the actual ingredients, right? And again, as Travis said, use frozen vegetables. If you have to, you can get like those bag frozen veggies, microwave them, saute them in a pan with like a little bit of soy sauce for like, 5 minutes until they're not frozen anymore. And then they're not going to be the best texture in the world because they're from frozen. But hey, if you haven't got the time, it beats trying to cut up all the vegetables that you've got in the fridge that you never use, that have gone moldy because you bought them 2 weeks ago and you promised yourself you'd use them, which never happens. So have those accessible things ready to go. Use flavors, use condiments, use sauces to maximize your flavor. Don't rely on chicken and vegetables to give you the flavor, or beef and vegetables, whatever, to give you the flavor, because they're just not going to be the most flavorful foods in the world. Use sauces, right? You'll be surprised at how far 10 to 15 mils of a sauce, like a tablespoon of sauce, can go, especially in something like, if you're using something like soy sauce, it's got fuck all calories in it, right? You're not using like a pre-made sugary teriyaki sauce and you're drizzling it over the whole thing, but a splash of soy sauce can really bring out a lot of flavor, especially to something like a stir fry. So have some seasonings and have some sauces ready to go, whether it's something like sriracha, or there's sugar-free barbecue sauce that you can get as well, the sort of lower calorie options there. Use that to your advantage. So that if you're a meal prepper on a Sunday, bulk cooking things like chicken breast or a pasta, and just getting that all done in one big pot and pre-portioning that out, those are meals that tend to lend themselves really well to sort of longer term prepping. Obviously, you can do things like wraps and sandwiches that are a little bit more individual. You can do, as Travis talked about, kind of the day of. It's not as important to pre-prep them if you've got the capacity and the time. But chicken and rice, again, it's a bit of a meme, and it's a bit of a bodybuilding staple, but it is something that works. But it doesn't have to be something that's bland. So adding flavors using those seasonings and sauces is a big one. Prepping them in big bulk batches on the Sunday is it's a lot easier than you think. But then it's just finding, well, what's my level at? Am I cooking up some, microwaving some frozen vegetables? Am I going to be using Uncle Ben's rice pouches because I can't be bothered or I don't have the capacity to cook, a bunch of rice? Am I going to be using the like pre-portion? If I want to have something a little bit different, do I use like a 2-minute noodle packet that I can, cook up in 2 minutes, and then I've got my source of carbs for whatever meal I'm having? So 2-minute noodles, who would have thought they get done in 2 minutes? But you've got those sort of more quick and accessible options. Like if you want a really tasty pasta, we use the continental pre-packaged pastas for meals all the time as a source of carbs. Like they have like the carbonaras or the like creamy chicken and bacon, whatever, right? It's just basically you mix it up with a cup of milk and a cup of water and a little bit of butter, and you pour that in and boil it, and after 8 minutes you've got like a relatively tasty pasta that you have as like a side, or you can stir with chicken or do whatever else you want with it, right? So those are the options in my head that are just kind of the easy go-to things. I've talked to you a little bit about like the master food recipe packets as well. Those are also really, really handy. But when it comes to prepping your meals in advance, either double cooking your dinners and just increasing the amount of, either if you need to buy bigger pots, but just doubling your ingredients and then portioning those things out for future meals. Or when you are cooking, just make sure you're using the right flavors. You're using things that give it a bit of oomph. It's not just chicken and rice. It's, it's a chicken stir fry with rice, and you've got a sauce that goes with it, and it all comes together really nicely. So don't be shy to use flavors and sauces. They make the process a lot more enjoyable, because otherwise you're kind of stuck with really bland foods, and you're never going to stick to a diet with bland foods.
Dude, I completely agree. And I think when we're looking at meal prepping hacks, not everyone has a wife like mine. She cooks everything for me, and she lives to make me happy through food, right? Like, I'm surprised I'm not like 180 kilos, to be honest. But like, she gets
that would make you happy.
That would make her happy. You might have more time constraints with you and your partner. So you're like, oh, I don't have time, or we don't have time when we get home to cook this type of food. And it's like, well, okay, well, you have time somewhere in the week to prepare. Okay. And Jace just says, like, we talked about before, the frozen veg, if you have no time, like that's literally 2 minutes in the microwave, right? Same as rice, 2 minutes in the microwave, or 90 seconds. So when we look at other things, 90 seconds specifically, yeah, exactly. If not, it's like, you can actually chop up your potatoes over on the weekend, right? So just pre-chop, right? So, you literally skin the potato, chop them up. You can batch it up into, 100-gram baggies or 400-gram baggies or whatever you're going to do. And then when you get home, drizzle a little bit of olive oil in it, put some seasoning on it, chuck in the air fryer. So something that we love is air fryer, sweet potato fries, or just normal potato fries that we make ourselves. We know the weight, and we know, obviously, making sure there's some good seasoning on it. And it takes like 12 to 14 minutes inside the air fryer, and it's super fast to do, and and we've already chopped it up. So it's like you just chuck it in the air fryer and it's done within 14 minutes. Now with yourself, if you are then making your food in a slow cooker the morning of, again, other hack for most people to do, if you're going to have a silver cider, you are going to have maybe chicken tonight, not chicken tonight, but chicken tonight. And, you can literally just chuck, 4 chicken breasts, chuck some, chicken stock in there or some water, chuck some other seasoning, chuck it in the slow cooker, put it on for 12 hours, put it in the morning. You're just going to grab it out at night. You can pull it apart with a fork. It's that juicy. It's that tender. Like, we use a slow cooker at least 3 times a week. Especially coming into winter, you want warm foods. You come home, the smell of the food's coming through the house. Like you're already tasting it before you're even tasting it, because it's just the aromas coming through your house. They're amazing. Now, all you have to do is just pull it out of the slow cooker and it's done. And at the same time, you're chucking some, pre-cut potato or sweet potato into an air fryer, and it's done. It's all served up within about 20 minutes of you actually being home, and you didn't have to do anything that night. So it takes like 5 minutes to chuck it into a slow cooker in the morning, and at nighttime, chuck your sweet potato or potato in the air fryer, and then chuck your microwave veggies in there, and you're all done, guys. So making sure we're using an air fryer, making sure we're using a slow cooker, those are the 2 key things I would definitely say most people should be using as far as time savers and as far as taste savers as well. right? So it's
Yeah.
like they definitely, because when you're slow cooking something, they are so tender and it just pulls in all the juices, especially if you are seasoning probably into the meat. And like I would just say that if you're going to have tasty dinners, they are probably the best purchases for you to have inside your house.